The default state of a startup is failure. I don't think of myself as a founder. I think of myself as an employee to my team. You need to find inspiration and amusement in the small things in life.
You got your next job also through a cold email. So is it skill or is it the bill?
The strategic use of the F word in a meeting. If I had my way, tomorrow Bangalore would be called Jairam. If you don't have conviction, who else would? I want you to have an opinion. I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you're transgender, gay, or whatever. First year of engineering, I got a band to play at the annual college festival. They liked my work so much that they offered me to manage them. I was 17 or 18. The best thing that could have happened to a 17, 18-year-old, asking a decently big-sized brand, asking this kid to manage them. If you stay here, you're going to be pulled down. I want you to be away from this in a bigger city. And he said this in 93 or 94, which I still remember. And it's a common phrase that is used now. It is going to be survival of the fittest. Are you going to be one of those or not? I would swap. On traditional day, I would wear formals and go, and I would be the only one. I would obviously get the looks, and I wasn't the most confident. The success for parents is their kids' success. My name came in Bombay Times once, small, but that made them proud. बेटा कुछ ठीक कर रहा है, right? Music में भी ठीक कर रहा है, उसको करने देते हैं. West Coast to East Coast straight is about 3,000 miles. I zigzagged my way through the country, where I touched 30 states. I drove for 10,350 miles, which is about 16,000 or 17,000 kilometers. Slept in the car on most nights. Had some really amazing experiences. LA to Bombay, as the bird flies, is 8,700 miles. I could have driven back, right? I'm not going to ask my parents for $3,000, $4,000 a month because I want to stay back in the US and play beer pong and do drugs, right? Like that's just not my value system. And it sucks to be broke when you're 26, 27 because your friends are calling you out for drinks. You don't have money. And they're like, no man, it's all good. Like just come out, we'll pay for you. 2013 was one of the toughest years for me because mentally, I was drained, completely drained. There's no right or wrong, it's what you decide. So I don't know if there's one reason, but it was just personal conviction, but it did work out. If I don't get it and come back, it's okay. But if I get in, for me personally, it's a life-changing experience. So it's about not giving up, right? And I just kept following up. The first hotel I go to, I see a lot of Pearl Jam t-shirts, fans. I'm like, perfect. Here's the hotel they're at, right? And I get talking to the fans. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. I go running up to Mike and I'm like, hey, Mike, I can't make it to the show tonight. I have a flight back at 10 p.m. I have to go to the airport. But I would love to meet Jenna. I've met everyone else. I would love to get a picture with him. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And he takes out his wallet, gives me a plectrum. He's like, yeah, whatever. Like, why did he call you in? Yeah. And I'm showing my picture and I'm Jeff. Top 10 startups in Bangladesh. And I've done this in Nepal, I've done this in Myanmar, I've done this in 30 odd countries. Start younger, you won't have liabilities, more free to experiment.
We are going to cover the story of a very, very interesting personality. This is a gentleman who's not afraid at all. I mean, there are some people who get life on platter and there are some people who make their way. So he's a person who's a very passionate music lover and he went on to meet his favorite band Pearl Jam on his own through a cold approach. And he has, through cold emails, he has landed himself a job in Uber without a pedigree, which is a very rare thing to see. And he also, in fact, got his first angel investor through a cold approach, and he has written to very many personalities across the globe and gotten response from them. So we are going to learn a lot of such skills from him today in this conversation, and a very interesting one that he also taught us during this conversation, that how can you use the F word strategically in a professional setup and make yourself look much more confident in the meeting. So let's cover the story of Utsav Agarwal, who's the founder of Evenflow, where he's building brands across categories in India. Hi guys, welcome to Game Room. Today we have with us Utsav, who is the founder of Evenflow, where they are building brands across all categories.
Yes.
So welcome Utsav, and thanks for taking out time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So what we are going to do, Utsav, today is that we are going to cover your journey. Right from where you come from, as well as, so we are interested a lot in what Utsav is as a person, and how did he transpire to become an entrepreneur, and what is he looking forward to as a person as well as a founder going forward. So Utsav, quickly to begin with, we would love to understand what Evenflow does, and and what is it you guys are trying to achieve, and then maybe we'll dig into various aspects of your life.
Awesome. So Evenflow is a 2.5-year-old company. When we started off, the vision was to acquire multiple brands across categories and scale them, build a common infrastructure layer, and scale all of these brands across platforms, be it online or offline. I think since then, the vision has kind of evolved.
Okay.
It is not to acquire 50 or 100 brands, which was the vision when we started off. And I think it's as a founder, it has to keep evolving with time. Today, we own 8 brands across a few categories: sports and fitness, baby care, lawn and garden, home and kitchen. And the idea is to go deep into these brands and scale them with new product launches across platforms, offline, and maybe in the months to come, international as well.
So, sir, we would. So, as I said, that we are very keen to dig more into your life. So just want to understand where were you born, what kind of family you belong to, and how was your childhood? How were you raised?
So even before I get into that, right, I think being called an entrepreneur is a very loaded term. I like to think of myself more as a businessman than an entrepreneur.
Super.
Right? I don't know if I can do justice to the word entrepreneur. When I feel ready, I would be okay with it. Now, coming to life, right? I'm born and raised in Allahabad, which is now renamed to Prayagraj.
Yeah.
It's in UP. Did my schooling till 7th standard out there. Dad, businessman, lived in a joint family. Typical childhood, playing a lot of cricket, and the usual, right? And then Dad had this foresight to move us to Bombay in '98. Dad had a flat in Bombay at that point. I come from a humble family. So he said, I want you to move there so that you have the exposure to the world. Otherwise, in Allahabad, your thinking will stay narrow and you will be content. I want you to go and see the world, get the exposure. Moved to Bombay in '98, 8th standard. That was a big culture shock for me, right? The first few semesters, I remember I failed in English and I topped Hindi. And over the period of 2 years, Hindi marks started kind of lowering because I started picking up Mumbaiya Hindi,
Yeah.
Bombaiya Hindi,
Yeah.
and my English started improving, right? That started increasing. Those 2 or 3 years were, I think, very, very, very critical in how I've been shaped as an individual. Then the usual, in Maharashtra, you have 11th, 12th as junior college. In other parts of India, that's still part of school. Did engineering because I did not know what else to do. In the first year of engineering, so around that time, I got really into the independent music scene in Bombay. There were rock bands that were playing one-off shows. There used to be this festival called Independence Rock, which used to be held at Rang Bhavan, right next to Xavier's College on 15th August. And It was all black t-shirts, long hair, loud music. And I found some sense of a calling and I fell in love with that subculture. First year of engineering, I got a band to play at the annual college festival. They liked my work so much that they offered me to manage them. I was 17 or 18 then. And I couldn't have said no. It was just like the best thing that could have happened to a 17, 18-year-old asking a decently big size brand, asking this kid to manage them. I was doing my studies. My parents were really scared at that time. I'd grown my hair out. I had hair till here. I think my parents were worried that I was going down the wrong path, doing drugs. I was coming home late at night, most nights, but I was good at studies. I'd always figure out what to study and when to study. I would, during the exam time, I would study a month before, and that's all I would do. Get my first grade, and then go back to the music. That was the life. And then I graduated in 2007. I knew I wanted to continue in the music industry. I did a bunch of things. I worked with EMI Music. I produced events. I was dabbling in anything and everything that was thrown at me. I just wanted to absorb it all. And the next step at that point for me was, how do I get to the mecca of entertainment, which is Los Angeles? Again, I come from humble beginning. I figured out a really cheap course at UCLA Extension. It was all of $8,000 for a year. Applied, got in, got some scholarship, went there, paid all my bills by doing random jobs, including washing bathrooms. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Worked in the industry there for a year. Saw my favorite bands that I wanted to see. Pearl Jam, which has left a has a huge impact on me. Came back in 2011, and those 2 years that I spent in LA were pivotal in opening my eyes to the tech ecosystem. Every single professor that came in to teach me said the old shiny round object, they were referring to CDs, is dead. It's going to be tech in the music industry. And when I came back, I just wanted to immerse myself in tech. And the best way to do that was for me to start something. Back then, I don't know if it still happens, in Bombay, there used to be an event called Startup Saturdays, which used to happen at Bhavan's College. I would just go there. I was a 26-year-old broke kid, network. I had an idea that I was toying around with. I found my angel investor there, did that startup for 2 years. And I think that kind of propelled the journey into the tech ecosystem. Since then, I've been lucky to get a chance to work at Uber for 3.5 years, Glovo, which is like Swiggy and Zomato, from Barcelona, very big in Europe, and then now give a second shot at starting something of my own.
You brushed past such a long life and very few minutes, but I'm very, very keen. So, see, my objective today is going to be, dig a little more deep into, a lot of decisions which we make come from a background or the value system which we have grown up with, right? And you mentioned that your dad, pushed you to move to Mumbai and have a better perspective of life. In spite of having a well-settled business in Allahabad, I'm assuming he didn't move with you, right?
He did not. And I think he sacrificed a lot over the next 10 years, where he was shuttling up and down. Mom also sacrificed a lot. They were separate for about 10 years. Mom would go back. Sometimes I would be by myself or my brother. So there were sacrifices made, I think, which all of our parents have made, right? And
but why that need? I mean, so for example, if I have to look at my life, for instance, and let's say if I have a kid and if I have a business which is very, very well which is a flourishing business, let's say in Bangalore, and and I know for a fact that I can give that kid a good upbringing along with me at Bangalore versus, I mean, I can also send that kid to Silicon Valley and, I mean,
Fair.
let that kid do something of it. Obviously, I know the value of being away from home. There's a lot of learning which comes with it. But the kind of sacrifice which your parents have made by staying away from each other, does it stem from somewhere? Because we always try to inculcate something to our next generation, which we always aspired but didn't get.
Two reasons. My dad told me when I was 8 years old that you are not getting into my business. So you have to figure shit out on your own, right? Either you get into service or you become an industrialist. And he wanted to be in Bombay. My granddad had bought a flat which he took over, he bought, but he couldn't because granddad Baba wanted him to be. And it's the classic joint family issues that were cropping up in my hometown. And he's like, if you stay here, you're going to be pulled down. I want you to be away from this in a bigger city. And he said this in 93 or 94, which I still remember. And it's a common phrase that is used now. It is going to be survival of the fittest. Are you going to be one of those or not? Right? So he wanted us to go and fend for ourselves. In the example you gave, if you have kids and you're in Bangalore, I don't think you need to take that decision because you're already in a tier one city. And second, I don't think it matters as much today between a tier one, tier two in exposure because everyone has access to the same information, right? Back in late 90s or early 2000s, the exposure and access you had in a bigger city was much different from what you had in a tier 3, tier 4. It was not just information, it was access to brands and people and thought and ideologies and how you shaped up as an individual. Bombay, everyone in school spoke in English. It was just how things were. Back in Allahabad, I was studying in an ICSE school, English medium, very good school, but the default language was Hindi, right? And somewhere to be successful and to be confident, you have to learn the ropes early. Your personality is shaped up by the time you're 2021. So he wanted us to go and get that for our own better future. And that's why those sacrifices. And I think somewhere he wanted to be in Bombay post 2007-8 once he retired. He spent the next 10 years of his life with us in Bombay.
Super. Okay. And do you remember during your growing up days, did you have a very clear demarcation of what's right and wrong?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've toyed around with a lot of things that might be labeled as illegal, right? And I think exposure and experiences is what you should target. As long as you're not getting yourself into trouble or going like behind the bars, let's say, right? Or getting your family into serious trouble. So I don't think I did. I was a very typical, looking back, I would call myself a typical, maybe not when I was in it, a typical 18, 19, 20-year-old kid with a lot of teenage angst, right? I wanted to be a rebel. I wanted to rebel against my mom and dad. It's just one of the things that I did, and I was the only one in college who did that. Our college had a day for formal wear and traditional wear, right? And these days would fall just right after, next to each other. I would swap.
Yeah.
On traditional day, I would wear formals and go, and I would be the only one. I would obviously get the looks, and I wasn't the most confident. I would have my anxiety, like people are looking at me and there's something going on. But it's that rebel was there, right? And it did that. So it's about doing things differently, and I don't think I had a demarcation of what is right or wrong. And even today, who defines what is right or wrong, right?
Exactly.
I think more than right or wrong, Our conscious tells us what is good and bad. But right and wrong is very subjective. So a lot of my inspiration comes from music, right? And Pearl Jam, I spoke about them. There was a song called "Thumbing My Way." Uh, they have a line in that song. I can't remember it exactly, but it's not about right or wrong. It's about like good or bad, something like that, right? So I think that your conscious knows that we've been born and raised with what is right and what is wrong. If I'm screaming at you, if I'm snatching something from you, we all in the room know that's bad. Right or wrong, we leave it to others. It could be for a reason where it's right or where it's wrong.
Correct. But these decisions you made for yourself or your parents made for you?
I think my parents, the best part about my parents, right? Coming from a small town, Allahabad, they had a very broad mind. So they let me be. Obviously, they did. And when I think back, I would be worried if I was them when I was 18, 19. Right? So it's like I didn't get home till 3 or 4 in the morning. I would be worried if I was them. But they let me take my own path as long as I was enjoying it and they felt I was on the right path. What does success mean for our parents? The success for our parents is their kids' success. My name came in Bombay Times once, small, but that made them proud,
Nice.
right? And they're like, okay, बेटा कुछ ठीक कर रहा है, right? Music में भी ठीक कर रहा है, उसको करने देते हैं. My grades were not falling down. I have got in Maharashtra, you call it KT. I have 0 KTs. And it's a common thing that engineers talk about that if you don't have a KT or 2, you haven't really experienced engineering. I didn't get any KTs. So I think those decisions, the good, bad, the demarcation, they let me be and let my own thinking evolve. Obviously, they would sit me down and give me quote unquote gyan. But if I was in their shoes, I think I would do the same thing. My dad, and I'm 37, I'm not married, guys. And my dad is no more, my mom is. I think they would be fine if I went home with a Muslim girl or if I married a Muslim girl. They're completely okay with it.
Have you ever asked them what made them trust you so much? Is it only love or beyond that?
I think they knew that I like to have my fun and experiences, but I have a decent head on my shoulders. And I have proven that time and again, be it during engineering, be it after, be it spending time with them. And it's a love-hate-love relationship with all our parents, right? We all have fights with them. But somewhere they have backed my decisions and I have made those decisions play out well where they have felt proud about them. So it's like building that trust, right? As you're growing up. If you're a fuck up in 18, 19, and you're getting your parents are being called in every second month, or your grades are falling, or if you ever don't have a good job, or you're not, there's something off, they can see it. Like I firmly believe today that if a kid starts smoking, mom and dad are aware in 6 months. It's just that they don't want to talk about it or address it. It's a belief. I don't know if it's true or not, right? So I think they knew that I have a good head on my shoulders. And I've got myself into trouble multiple times, and my dad has laughed at it. But he knew at the end of the day, I'm headed in the right direction. That's what gave them confidence.
Great. So what made you come back to India? I mean, why not pursue a music career in US itself?
I wanted to. I did not want to come back. I did this 2-month road trip while on the way back. So I'll just talk about the road trip for 30 seconds, right? LA to New York, West Coast to East Coast, straight, is about 3,000 miles. I zigzagged my way through the country where I touched 30 states. I drove for 10,350 miles, which is about 16,000 or 17,000 kilometers. Slept in the car on most nights, had some really amazing experiences. LA to Bombay, as the bird flies, is 8,700 miles. I could have driven back, right? And when I came back, I did not even get a new SIM for a week. I was just sulking, right? I did not want to come back. I had no money. I was broke. I like to say that I had a midlife crisis then when I was 26. And it took me 2 or 3 months to get out of it, to figure out what I want to do next. Why I did not go back into the music industry is because at that point, when I came back, I wanted to make money. I'd worked in the music industry for 4 years. I'd enjoyed it. I could have gone and joined a music management company, but I wouldn't have made money. And I did not see in 3 or 4 or 5 years making serious money. I had a personal target then, which I wanted to make for myself. And the best way I figured to do that is to do something of my own. And at that point, I did not know about Naval Ravikant, Chamat Palipatya, and all of this. It was my curiosity that got me really deep and started reading about these guys. So it happened by chance. I did not want to come back. I did not want to start up. I did it because I wanted to make money. I had an idea, and I figured the best way to throw myself into the tech ecosystem in India is to do something of my own. I learn by doing, and I learn by meeting people. That's my way, at least, and that's been the journey.
But so your parents could have supported you, right? I mean, even when you wanted to remain in US.
Visa.
Okay.
Okay, visa. And I could have gone back to school there. But I come from humble beginnings. I'm not going to ask my parents for $3,000, $4,000 a month because I want to stay back in the US and play beer pong and do drugs. Right? Like, that's just not my value system. And that was the only way I could have stayed back. Otherwise, like, I could have been on a visitor visa, or I had to go back to school. Both were not possible options for me. So I came back, and I was really broke for a year. And it sucks to be broke when you're 26, 27, because your friends are calling you out for drinks. You don't have money. And they're like, no, man, it's all good. Like, just come out, we'll pay for you. But your inner conscious will do it once, twice, thrice, but 4 times be like, nah, I'm not going out. I'd rather just sit at home.
Yeah.
I had no money.
Yeah.
Right? But it teaches you things. Those moments teach you so much.
But so when you want to make money, the last thing which you should do is start up on your own, right? Because you have to invest much more, right? It will take out more than it will give you in the initial phase. So why not take up a job?
I could have taken a job which would have paid me 50 to 60,000 rupees that time in 2011.
Yeah.
And I did not see that growing exponentially. So somewhere, again, dots, you can only connect the dots backwards, right? Not so. And I don't think I was as intellectual. I mean, I'm somewhat. I've learned along the way, where it was a conscious decision to do this because I figured I can make money. But I figured I don't want to take a job of 60,000 rupees a month, slog it out 6 days a week. I'd rather do something of my own and take the long shot. And the 2.5 years that I did my first startup, it was called Now Playing. It was a music sharing app. I'd raised about $200,000 for that company, which in 2012 today is equivalent to more than like 1.5 million.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One is inflation. Second, my iOS engineer, Nakul Kabra, one of the best in India. He's heading iOS with Truecaller in Stockholm now. He was at what, like 6 lakhs an annum? Today, that dude will get paid like $200,000, right?
Yeah.
It's not just inflation; it's because tech,
Yeah.
the ecosystem, the money. So I was able to build that for 2 years, and I was naive. I didn't know anything, right? But I got so deep into the ecosystem and I started interacting with people that when I got a shot at Uber, I just gave it my all. And Uber is a story. I'll share this. I've shared this story before. I'll share
Just
it again.
before you get into that,
Okay.
I want to understand a little bit more in terms of what you mentioned that you did now play for 2.5 years, right?
Right.
So, what? So when you were starting, I mean, out obviously you mentioned that you had a lot, you were vulnerable at that point in time.
I'm still vulnerable.
But so काफी फटती है when you start, right? I mean,
अभी भी फटती है.
so
फटनी अच्छी बात है.
Yeah, exactly.
That means you care.
yeah.
People who don't care don't. It's like if you're going into an interview and you don't have butterflies in your stomach, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because then you don't care.
Yeah.
You should have the right amount of just अब एग्जाम में पेपर देने जाते थे कैसा फील होता था?
Yeah. Correct.
करेक्ट, वो होना चाहिए.
So what drove you? I mean, during those 2.5 years, I mean, when you were building, I'm sure every founder goes through a lot of grinds and a lot of self-doubt during that period. What kept you going during that? Was it only money, or there were reasons beyond that?
I had sold myself to the idea I was building. And that's a biggest mistake. That's one of the big mistakes that founders do. We get married to the idea that we start off with, the solution more than the problem. And I was sold to it completely, right? I moved to Cochin because my angel investors were from Cochin. I based myself out of there for 6 to 8 months, tried to build the app out of there, didn't work, moved to Bangalore. I was positioned out of Diamond District. I think everyone in Bangalore would know that building. It's like, I think it's a incubation hub for so many startups.
Yeah.
I was living, my team was 5 people. I was living with those 5 people in a 3 BHK, and we would work out of there.
Wow.
Right? It's classic what you hear about.
Yeah.
We would walk through the day in the hall. We would drink in the evening. 5 people. We lived together. What drove me was I wanted to see progress. I wanted to learn. And I wanted to see this become big. But then I had my 2013 was one of the toughest years for me because mentally I was drained, completely drained. And at that time, I did not know I had bipolar. But that was a tough year. After fighting with it for 6 to 8 months, I took the decision that this is not going anywhere. And again, there is no right or wrong. I can tell you hundreds of stories where people have just made it on the last dollar, or people who have shut down have done something well after. There's no right or wrong. It's what you decide. And you're right. So I don't know if there's one reason, but it was just personal conviction. And I take that into what I'm doing today at Evenflow. The last 1 year has been bloody hard. But what keeps me going is that conviction, is the optimism. And unless you have that, with the just right amount of paranoia, you can't. Because the default state of a startup is failure, right? Let's. If you say no to that, you're like you're bullshitting yourself. When you're in that kind of a probability matrix, unless you're going to be optimistic, how the heck are you going to make it? And I mean, the default state happened for the first one. And it's possible for this one as well. But all I can do is make it as hard as possible and put in everything I have so that we succeed. but still that default outcome in terms of probability is still going to be the same.
How difficult was it to stop the first one?
It was a relief because I was coming. It was hard last 6 to 8 months. When I finally took that call, it was almost a relief. I was mentally drained, and I needed something to pick me up. Right. So once the decision was made and I'd communicated that to the investors, we returned like 90% of the capital back to the investors.
Nice.
We hadn't used much of the capital, right? And we returned it back to the investors, got into the process of shutting down the company and stuff, which is again just takes long, and it's a long process. I think I was relieved. I was like, because when you're in the thick of things and you don't know where to move, it almost feels like you have nowhere to go, right? And there's so many stakeholders. You have investors, you have customers, you have your employees. So it was a relief. And then thankfully, Uber happened, which was the biggest pick-me-up that I could have got.
Just last moment of that thing, because I mean, as a founder, whenever you go through these moments of self-doubt, right? I mean, there are a lot of these stakeholders which you spoke about, investors. Thankfully, you didn't use too much of their money, but it was an opportunity cost for them anyways. But I mean, your employees and customers are the ones who has bought into your story, right? And I mean, so was that not, I mean, what kind of, because I always keep thinking about this, that let's say if in case भगवान ना करे ऐसा अब कैसे ऐसी कभी नौबत नहीं आए, but today we have to answer to 60-65 people जिनके सामने मैं रोज conviction के साथ बोलता हूँ कि हम लोग कुछ बड़ा करेंगे, but at one point if in case I have to go to them with that face that boss, I'm so sorry. So did that, I mean, how easy or difficult was it to...
So I was staying with these 5 people, right? And they kind of knew it was coming.
Okay.
We sorted everything out. They all got different gigs. We all moved on well. And just to the point of like 60-65 people, or how many other people, right? I don't think of myself as a founder. I think of myself as an employee to my team.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That's the reality, yeah.
Right? You might think that मेरा कोई boss नहीं है. Everyone else is my boss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree. Completely agree.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. That's how I operate.
Yeah. You also mentioned that, I mean, you need to be an eternal optimist when you are running your own company. So how do you maintain that? How do you condition yourself to remain like that? Because as you also said that failure is default mode of a startup.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
So what I've learned over a period of time is you need to find inspiration and amusement in the small things in life. For me, that's music. For me, that could be a tweet that I read. That could be something, a podcast that I listen to, and some pages of a book that I read, a documentary that I see. And I can, like, there's a Netflix show called Untold Stories, and there's an episode called Breaking Point. It's about Marty Fish. He was #1 tennis player, American tennis player for a while. Beautiful story. It's like, just how do these athletes think and operate, right? I want to think and operate in that way. And as long as you keep finding inspiration in the smallest of things, I think that's how I train myself to stay positive. Like a tweet that I read a week back, and it stuck with me, and it'll not stick with me forever, but it stuck with me for now. It's like, I'll come back to it if anything.
Sure. No,
yeah. But it could be a lyric of a song. It could be, like I saw the documentary on Anthony Bourdain. He was a chef, how he committed suicide. And there's something warped in me because my favorite form of music is grunge. Grunge, for those who don't know, it's music that came out of Seattle, In late 80s, early 90s, bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots. And it's not happy music, but that makes me happy. Um, and I think so I'm warped that way where I get inspired and happy by listening to that kind of music. It could be something else for you. It could be Taylor Swift. Go listen to Taylor Swift, but find like. And I'm surprised when I talk to a lot of Gen Z people, right? Does something inside of you move when you watch a documentary or you read a book or you watch a film or you listen to a music or you go for a walk? It could be, or you go for a date. It could be anything. I'm not saying it should move for every documentary, but there's something that, like, do more of it.
Nice. Okay, super. So, one thing which you spoke about is how you got into Uber, and it was an interesting story. So, I also know that there are a lot of pedigreed people who get into Uber, and I mean, I understand that you're you are not academically like those IITians or an
I haven't done MBA. I haven't done a B
yeah.
school. Yeah.
So how did you manage to break through Uber?
So my brother, my best friend Varun, he passed out of ISB in 2013. He was looking out for a gig, and I was so plugged into the ecosystem that I read about Uber coming to India. I asked him to apply. He hadn't heard about them. He got through. He was employee number 2 for Uber India, Varun Munkur. In December 2013, Jan 2014, when I was wrapping up my startup, I was like, hey man, like, should I join? How's it? He's like, it's awesome. It's the best thing I've ever done. I'm like, I want to be a part of this. I'm like, what roles are open? He's like, hey, there's a marketing manager open and you'll be a good fit for it. I'm like, cool. And they had a exercise. So I do that exercise. In a week's time, he's like, hey, you know what? Operations manager is opened up as well. I'm like, I want to do operations manager now. And it's marketing, you need to be more creative, comms, you need to come from that skill set. For operations, you need to be more data, analytics, Excel. For that, there was an Excel exercise that they sent you at that time. I was horrible at Excel that time. I took the test and I failed, right? And Uber had a process. If you did not get like this 70% on that exercise, you can't move forward. So they rejected me. I got a rejection email. I'd met the hiring manager that time, Neeraj Singhal. So I just kept following up with him for the next month. I would keep dropping him a text every 3 to 4 days. I remember April 8th. I was doing meditation that time as well. I'd come out of the Isha Foundation in an engineering course. It was beautiful. I'd just done my morning meditation. I get on my laptop. I write him a short email. And the email ended with, I can teach myself Excel in 2 hours, but you can't teach someone hustle. There was a response in an hour. He's saying, hey, I'm happy to give you one more shot at it, which we don't do. You have to take the exercise again. You have to do this extra exercise. And you have to meet me April 10th, 2 days later, here at this time for the in-person interview. Cracked it, met him, went really well. Then I spoke to 2 more people, head of expansion and head of ops for entire Asia Pacific and Europe. And I joined Uber on April 24th.
Wow.
Right? So it's about not giving up, right? And I just kept following up. I'm not saying it's always going to work out, but it did work out. And it's just a philosophy I follow, right? So when I was in LA has a lot of secret shows. Artists will announce at the last second that they're playing a small club. So a Foo Fighters, a Soundgarden, big bands that will usually play in a stadium of 50, 60,000 people, They'll play a small club of 300 people. They'll announce and the tickets will sell out in literally 5 seconds. Most people, 99.99% of the people, will not go for the show. You know what I did? I went for the show. I went for the show early. I reached there at 4. The show was going to start at 8. And I would just start talking to people. 80 to 90% of the time, I got into the show.
Wow.
Either someone sold me a ticket at cost price, or one of the band members' crew would just let me in because he saw me standing and he saw that I cared. So, and I just figured, what did I have to lose? What do I have to lose? If I don't get in and come back, it's okay. But if I get in, for me personally, it's a life-changing experience. Am I going to put in that? I use the same thought process into Uber. And I use that for a lot of things I do even today.
One small story which I would like to narrate, knowing, I mean, this whole personality of yours. So, and it's on optimism, right? Because I think this comes from an optimism that, I mean, you will get in. So there was this village which was not getting rains for a very, very long time. Everybody was starving and there was drought. And everybody was praying that, I mean, it should rain. And I mean, everybody decided that they wanted to go to a temple, and somebody told them that if you go to the temple, pray, it will rain for sure. And everybody went to that temple, and one kid went to the temple with an umbrella. And that is the kind of optimism which I could sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you are in those shows, I mean, hoping that, I mean, I will get, hoping नहीं, मेरे ख्याल से just wanting to get it.
मैं एक और स्टोरी नरेट करता हूँ. ठीक है. Pearl Jam. One of the things on my bucket list was to watch Pearl Jam in South America. Why South America? I've seen them in Europe, I've seen them in US. Again, guys, I come from a humble beginning. I've made this happen, and I don't call it luck. You create your own luck, right? Why South America? Because I think South Americans are the most passionate people. Watch any football game in South America. They're crazy, right? And I've seen concert videos on YouTube. Just the involvement of the crowd is completely different from a European or a US show. So 2015, I've taken 2 weeks off from Uber. I've planned a trip to South America. I land in Santiago, Chile. They're playing there. I figure out which hotel they're at. Not that hard. I go there at 2 p.m. because they leave for the stadium for the show like at 3 or 4. I know this. And I get to meet the drummer, get a picture with him, get his autograph. And I met their guitar tech. I'm not going to extend the story, but I'd followed the vocalist of Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder, for 5 back-to-back shows in 2011 on the US road trip I was on. So I'd met the guitar tech that time. So I recognized his face in 2015 when I saw him. Obviously, he didn't recognize me. Who the fuck am I? Right? But I went up to him and told him, hey, Utsav, I'd done this 5 back-to-back shows. Big fan. Good to see you. You are like Mike, hello, hi, hello. That's it, right? I go to the show. Great. Then I go to Machu Picchu. I do my Machu Picchu. Then I see them again in a city in Brazil called Porto Alegre. Great show. Then I go to Rio. I hang out in Rio for 4 days. And I'm flying back from Rio. This is where the story gets really interesting. My flight from Rio is to Sao Paulo. It's like, whatever, 1 or 2 hour flight. Lands at 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. And I have a 8-hour layover. Pearl Jam is playing Sao Paulo that night. I knew this all along. Like I tracked, right? I'm like, I have 8 hours. I'm in the same country, so I don't need to do any visa or stuff. I land, I get out, get an Uber, and I start searching where they're staying on forums, on Twitter, right? And I'm like, let me go track it down. And by then, I'd met all the band members except the bass player, whose name is Jeff Ament. The first hotel I go to, I see a lot of Pearl Jam t-shirts, fans. I'm like, perfect. This is the hotel they're at, right? So I go, and there was a barricade outside the hotel. I go and stand there with the fans, and I get started talking to the fans. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. Mike comes out, and he's the guitar tech, so he's keeping some guitars in the cars and stuff. I go running up to Mike, and I'm like, hey, Mike, I can't make it to the show tonight. I have a flight back at 10 p.m. I have to go to the airport, but I would love to meet Jeff Hammond. I've met everyone else. I would love to get a picture with him. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And he takes out his wallet, gives me a plectrum. And he's like, yeah, whatever, just like fuck off, right? And rightly so, right? Like, so then I go back and stand behind the barricade. 15 minutes later, Mike comes out, looks towards the barricade, and does, you.
Oh.
I go running like a kid, right? I go running like a kid. He's like, I've spoken to Jeff. He's there waiting. You have 3 to 4 minutes.
Wow.
I got to speak to Jeff for about 3 to 4 minutes. I still have very, very, very clear memories of what we spoke about, hug, picture. And then when I was saying goodbye to Jeff, I saw the rest of the band walking. And I tried to approach them. I mean, you got to try a lot. And Mike is like, no, out. I'm like, thanks, Mike. I go out and imagine, right? All of these Brazilians, they're like, who are you? Like, why did he call you in?
Yeah.
And I'm showing my picture and I'm Jeff. That is creating luck. And then I roamed the streets for half an hour. I was just full of energy.
Yeah.
I took an Uber back to the airport. I hung out at the airport, took a flight back. But again, I had nothing to lose. Most people wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And while we were waiting in the waiting room, I think this is the most, exciting part of it. I believe that you got your next job also through a cold email, right? I mean, you have written your cold emails to a lot of people through this optimism.
Absolutely.
Would love to know, I mean, is it skill or is it the will?
I've honed the skill, and the skill can be honed if you have the curiosity to learn and tweak. And the will needs to be there. Without the will, you can't do it, right? I think I sucked at writing emails. I got better by observing, learning, and now I've become a stickler for, like, my emails have, like, you'll not find a punctuation error. And I've learned that at Uber. And I've learned how to respond to emails and quick. Even before Uber. First thing I figured out is how to figure out people's emails. If I don't know your email, I can track down your email in 2 or 3 minutes. There are multiple ways to do so. One, there was a tool called LinkedIn acquired the tool.
I know which one you're talking about.
It was a Gmail plugin.
Yeah.
Right? Something with R. I can't remember the name right now. It was beautiful. There are LinkedIn plugins which will give you the email. The most beautiful thing, and I don't think anybody knows this, right? I think 95% of the audience for this podcast would be using Gmail as their email. Go to the compose window. Let's say it's me, right? Utsav, Agarwal, companies, Evenflow brands. You already know what's after at, right? That you can figure out. Sometimes it can be abcd.ai, but the emails would be .com. That you can figure out because you can look at the support email.
Exactly.
Right? So you'll know it's .com or .ai. So you
Correct.
figured that piece out.
Yeah.
Right? Now you go to compose and you type first only my first name at evenflowbrands.com. Tab out. So basically just tab out and hover your mouse over that. Right? If it's not a right email, it will show you the default placeholder picture and no name. If it's the right email, you'll see something change. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you see nothing change, but it's the right email, then you go to trial and error. But this strategy works 95% of the times. So I can figure out people's email. Easy. And if you want to write to Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai, their emails are publicly available. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? So I wrote an email to Paul Graham in 2013. It was pg@ycombinator.com. It was publicly available. Right? I didn't even have to do any of this. And I think that's what I started learning. It's the importance of your subject line, importance of your body. Please don't start with how are you doing? Hope you're well. No, people don't have time. Get straight to the point. I've started writing hey, hi now in my emails. I think 2012 to 15, I would address you by your first name. That's it. Right?
Okay.
I wouldn't even do that. So I would just wrote like Paul. I've been this idea, blah, blah, blah. I wrote 2-line paragraphs with a call to action. And a call to action that he can respond to right then and there. Because if you ask anyone, not even just a busy person, to do something which will take them 15 minutes to respond to your ask, they will park it thinking they will come back to it, but they'll never come back to it.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So he responded.
Wow.
And he responded again without me replying. So he was thinking about it 10 hours later with something else, which just got my confidence sky high, and we had back and forth conversation. And then when I was at Uber, I launched Bangladesh market for them. And I was like, how do I go and connect with people in Bangladesh? I don't know anybody. My first thing was top 10 startups in Bangladesh. You'll get some results. There is, even in Nepal, and I've done this in Nepal, I've done this in Myanmar, I've done this in 30 odd countries. The smallest of countries will have a startup ecosystem. Top 10. You got the name. Go figure out who's the CEO on LinkedIn. Try the email hack I told you and write an email. When I was at Uber, I would say, Uber launcher coming to Dhaka, blah, blah, blah. 3 short lines. And who at that point did not want to meet someone coming from Uber? Uber had that pedigree, right? And this is Uber 2014, 15, 16. It was the hottest company. When I went to Glovo in Europe, I kind of used the same strategy, right? I would say ex-Uber launcher. I would do Glovo. Glovo was not as heard of. And you have to know what to put in the subject line. People would respond. And how did I get Glovo? I wrote a 2-line email to Oscar and Sasha, who were the co-founders. He responded in 2 days. We had a couple of conversations, and I was on the flight to Barcelona. Then, a friend of mine, he graduated from ISB in 2018 or 17, I'm not sure. He was looking for a job, right? And he had got a job with Paytm, but he's like, I want something exciting, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, why don't you try this? He's like, really? Does this work? He wrote the same email to WeWork founders.
Oh.
He got the job. And he was famous in India team because the WeWork founder just CC'd head of India recruitment, speak to this guy.
Wow.
So it works, right? I think the busiest people read all their emails.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's people think, वो नहीं पढ़ेगा, वो बहुत busy होगा. If you write something worthwhile, I will read and everyone will read and they will respond. I think even before we started the podcast, I was talking about Lee Fixel. Lee Fixel is Tiger Global. He was the one who invested into Flipkart in 2008. Visionary. broke out from Tiger Global 4 years back, started this new venture called Edition Ventures. I've written to him twice from Evenflow. He's responded both times within 3 hours, refusing the investment. I'm okay with it. But he's responding. And he's Lee Fixel. Lee. Okay. I'm not going to go there, but yeah.
But you'll be quite a stalker, though. I mean,
Why a stalker?
The ways in which you figure out things to reach out to people and then make them respond also. I mean, the way the story of Pearl Jam was inspiring, the way you figure out email. I'm just joking about the stalker.
No, but I think it's, see, stalking is a negative word, but I tell, and when I interview people, right, or when I go for a business partnership meeting, before I come to meet you, I would know a lot about your life. Why? I would like to break the ice in first 5 to 10 minutes. Because if I break the ice in first 5 to 10 minutes and we are comfortable with each other, the meeting is automatically going to go well, right? Instead of just starting. So these are things that you pick up. It's like if I'm sitting here, and I've done this with, while I was at Glovo, I would meet McDonald's MDs in different countries. So when I was at Glovo, right, in food delivery business, especially in US and Europe, getting McDonald's as a partner is like gold dust. That will make for 40% of your order. That will do all your customer acquisition. And Uber, which was my previous company before that, had a global partnership with McDonald's. And I had to go and somehow break that. I would go and meet McDonald's MDs. First thing, it's about, again, breaking the ice. If I'm sitting opposite you, I should have read everything about you, right? And there's a lot of information available about anyone and everyone to just pick up. Second, I would go and sit down and there would be a painting behind you. I'll start talking about that. I'm not going to talk about work for the first 5 minutes because I just want to shoot the breeze with you. I want us to get comfortable before we start talking business. And trust me, that works. You become more likable to that other person. And if you're more likable to that other person and it's more of a conversation than a business commercial meeting, it automatically will go much, much, much better. Another thing I'll add, and this is kind of controversial, and I picked up on this in 2010, and it got validated at Uber, is the strategic use of the F word in a meeting. And it could be the meeting with the most traditional people, right? Not only early stage startup. You get to use the word once or twice. The timing has to be right. It shows a lot of confidence. It breaks the ice. And it has helped me shape those meetings and relationships a whole lot better. And I've seen this with another guy named Eric Alexander. He was head of business for Uber Asia Pacific, a great guy when it comes to deal making. We would be in policy meetings, so government, and he would do this. And I just picked up on it. We never spoke about it, right? Once or twice. And I'm like, dude, that guy has some confidence. It just works. But again, you have to get comfortable with it.
I'll make this as a thumbnail of our podcast, the strategic use of the F word.
Let's go for it. That's awesome.
What other hacks which we can use? I mean, on our day-to-day lives, or for that matter, professionally, which can be impactful. I've seen that in your LinkedIn, you have written hiring barrels.
Right.
So what does that signify?
So there's how you have in India a Flipkart mafia. People who've come out of Flipkart, who have gone and built multiple successful companies. It's same thing had happened to PayPal. There are about 6 to 7 people who came out of PayPal. They are called the PayPal mafia. Elon Musk is one of them. Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, is one of them. YouTube founder, I can't recollect his name, was one of them. Another guy called Keith Rabois. He's known as an operator in the Valley. He was a partner at Khosla Ventures. He's currently a partner at Founders Fund. He's running a business similar to ours, actually, called Open Store, where he acquires Shopify stores. And he gave this ideology, I don't know when, about barrels and ammunition. Any startup needs a few barrels. And what he means by barrels is people who can execute on a project with minimal intervention. They will rally people and they will get things done. So even if you're a 500 or 1,000 people company, you need 5 to 6 barrels, and ammunition are people who execute,
Yeah.
right? Max 10 barrels. And he likes to say, and I kind of agree with it, the number of projects you can run parallel in a company is equal to the number of barrels you have. And as a founder, businessman, entrepreneur, you never say no to hiring a barrel.
Awesome. Super. So, so what next for Utsav? So I believe that you are running Evenflow currently, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have plans for Evenflow. But what I'm more keen to understand is that so you ran your first startup, you gained a lot of understanding and learning from that, and right now you are running the second one, and in between Uber and Glovo also happened. So what is it you are chasing right now? Because these are all mediums, right?
Right.
In our lives. The end goal is what for Utsav?
So let me just backtrack, right? If you had asked me what I wanted to do in life in 2008, my answer would have been I want to watch Pearl Jam live. It seemed that far off to me, right? And maybe have a chance to meet the band. It just seemed that distant. Again, coming from humble beginnings, I didn't have the money where I could just buy a ticket, go and see a show. I had to make that happen for myself. That happened by 2011-12. Then I set out to make money. I spoke about that earlier. When I came back from the US, I wanted to make money. My target was $1 million. I thought that was enough. Uber and Glovo have been, I would say, it's been a good success for me in terms of wealth creation and ESOPs. Both Uber is public, Glovo got bought out by Delivery Hero, which is public. So that's done. Today, and this is a little emotional, my dad loved nobody more than his dad. So that's my Baba, right? And my dad passed away in 2018. Today, my goal is to succeed at Evenflow, to make people who are working closely with me and making a difference money so that they don't have to work again if they don't want to, and make my dad just happy. If I had my way, tomorrow Bangalore would be called Jairam. That's my dad's name. I would do it.
Nice.
I am a bachelor. I'm very frugal. I don't have any spends. Right? So that's kind of my next thing at this point. And you need something. You need to chase something. Otherwise, you need something to get up in the morning with this excitement. Otherwise, what are you doing?
Super. And any final thoughts for people who are still on the fence? Let it be because there are 2-3 kind of people. People who are in their jobs who want to take this plunge. People who are studying who want to start something. And there are a lot of thoughts, apprehensions, and everything else. And you've been through many such roller coaster ride in your past as well. So what should they keep in mind when they want to do something?
Start younger. You won't have liabilities, right? Life starts catching up on you, be it loans, marriage, kid, if you can start early, you don't have those liabilities. You're more free to experiment. Not saying you can't do it after. It just gets slightly harder. Not for me because I've chosen a slightly different path. So it's different for me. And if you don't have conviction, who else would? I meet a lot of people without that conviction, curiosity, or passion, right? And it doesn't matter what it is for. You need it for something. Something has to drive you. Uh, there's a documentary on YouTube which is on Anonymous, the anonymous internet group, right? And it ends with this hacker lady who talks about, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you're a transgender, gay, or whatever. I want you to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I just want you to have an opinion. Today, I feel people don't have one. You should have an opinion if you're looking to do something of your own. Otherwise, it's anyways, as we spoke, the default state or a result of a startup is failure. Without having an opinion, you're increasing that probability further.
Sure. Super. I think if I have to summarize this conversation with you, Utsav, is that there's a very famous quote by Michael Jordan where he says that you miss all the chances you didn't take.
Yes.
So I think you have taken a lot of chances in your life, right? And without any fear, and that basically summarizes that. And you also mentioned one thing which I want to understand, which slipped my mind. You mentioned that you are not an entrepreneur; you are a businessman. What is that difference which you see between an entrepreneur and a businessman?
I don't know. I don't know if I can articulate it well. I just feel entrepreneur is a loaded word which I can't do justice to. I think everyone has imposter syndrome, right? All successful people have imposter syndrome. I'm not calling myself successful by any means at this point. I want to think of myself as a businessman. That's what my dad was. I'll see when I transition to entrepreneur. I don't think I can articulate it, but there's definitely an imposter syndrome in me as well.
Sure. Okay, great. I hope your story inspires at least one or two, even if it inspires that one person to take that
that's
leap.
it.
We would have solved the purpose, right? And I hope and stories like these are.
I hope someone gets inspired and pings me.
Yeah.
And pings me well so that I respond to it.
And figures out your email ID.
That's easy. That's on my LinkedIn. It's in my. I'm like,
Yeah.
I love receiving emails.
Yeah.
As I said, my life is open.
Yeah.
What you see, and what I don't put out there, nobody knows, and that's the way I like to just lead it.
I hope you find out many battles for sure. So thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts once again, Utsav. It was absolutely enriching to understand your journey, and thanks for opening up yourself in front of us. And I would urge all of you guys to go and follow Utsav on all the platforms, because you have been, as I said, that you have so many hacks, and you should, people should know, have that privilege to know you as well. If you guys like what we are doing, and if, I would request you to go and like, share, subscribe, and make sure that this podcast reaches to as many people as possible as well, because stories like these are the ones which, we keep looking for, which can at least tickle that small mindset of ours, and then
inspiration. You have to find inspiration in the small things. I find my inspiration in different things. If someone can find inspiration in my story, great.
Super.
I think we would have done a job.
Yeah, great. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.